El Camino Real, the King's Highway, noble name for a dusty footpath, designed not by royal engineers for regal journeys, nor made by labor in the employ of kings. This was the trail of the Padres, marked out and smoothed by weary sandaled feet in the pastoral days of California. El Camino Real, primitive beginning of one of the great road systems in world history, our modern California highway.
The first formal road in California was, of course, the El Camino Real, the King's Highway, connecting the California mission chain, built by Spain and the Franciscan Order, beginning in 1769. This is a picture of what is considered the oldest bridge in California, built in 1813, at Mission La Purísima in Santa Barbara County. The bridge and the mission are owned by the State of California Department of Parks and Recreation. This bridge was carried on the state's bridge maintenance inventory until very recently. The 1.5-foot stone slab span does not qualify as a bridge under modern-day standards. Transportation, until after the turn of the 20th century, was primarily by horse. This wagon and team of the 1880s are negotiating Casitas Pass, now State Route 150 in Ventura County. This is typical of roads in California before the state got involved. This is now U.S. Route 99 in Merced County. By the 1890s, bicycles became the vehicle of choice. They were a lot easier to care for than horses. They didn't have to be rubbed down, and they didn't have to be fed. These cyclists are on the Cahuenga Pass, now U.S. Route 101 in Los Angeles. Bicyclists formed clubs and then united under the banner of the League of American Wheelmen. These bicyclists demanded better roads, so they started a political movement known as the Good Roads Movement. The notes of the 1896 Highway Commission credit the League of American Wheelmen with having agitated the state legislature into assuming a responsibility for a state highway system. So, in 1895, the legislature appointed a Bureau of Highways Commission, whose job it was to recommend an appropriate state wagon road system to connect the county seats. The 3 commissioners spent the next 18 months traveling over 7,000 miles in a buckboard, surveying roads, and eventually recommending a 14,000-mile state road system. This is the commissioners in 1896 in Riverside County. Commissioner R.C. Irvine is seated in the buckboard. J.L. Maud is holding the camera. It is assumed that Commissioner Marsden Manson is taking the picture. The dog is Irvine's Gordon setter, Maje. The dog is the only one of the group that made the entire 7,000-mile trip. The same legislation that established the State Road Commission also appropriated funds to purchase the Lake Tahoe Toll Wagon Road as our first state highway. This is now U.S. Route 50 between Placerville and Myers in El Dorado County. After the turn of the century, automobiles became the popular mode of transportation. This 1906 scene is in Santa Cruz County on what is now U.S. Route 101. Back at Casitas Pass in Ventura County, and this time it's automobiles. The Mission Bell guideposts were placed along the El Camino Real in 1906. The money was raised by private subscription by the El Camino Real Association, headed by Mrs. A.S.C. Forbes. The signs along these new highways were poor, if not non-existent. The state did not get into the road signing business for many years. This task was taken up by the automobile clubs, who signed the roads for their members' convenience, a practice that lasted into the late 1960s. This picture, taken in 1911, is on U.S. Route 101 in San Benito County. This is another example of the roads challenging the early Highway Commission. This is the Coulterville grade in Merced Canyon in 1908. Now it is Route State 49. This is the Punchin Road through the Del Norte Redwoods, which was in the same condition well into the mid-1930s. This is now U.S. Route 101. The first work of the California Highway Commission was to conduct route location surveys for the new state highway system. This is a typical state highway survey crew with equipage. In fact, this is Survey Party Number 1 in 1911. Note the California Highway Commission's CHC livestock brand on the shank of the horse. Draft animals were regular state issue before the department became mechanized. The state employed teamsters and cooks to support field crews who were away from civilization for extended periods of time. A resident engineer's biggest budget item was often feed for his horses. By the way, resident engineer meant exactly that. The resident engineer was issued a tent and camping supplies and lived on the job site. Here's another scene typical of the roads drivers had to contend with. This was a typical activity on the field trip. This is an engineer, Lester Gibson, in 1915 on what is now Interstate 5 in Shasta County. Gibson later became district engineer in San Luis Obispo in 1919, a post he held for 31 years. He was in that position long enough to see these muddy roads develop into modern freeways. Now that the state had assumed the responsibility for building the highway system, it didn't necessarily have the money to make improvements. So the Motor Car Drivers Club picked up the banner of the Good Roads movement, started by the bicyclists a decade and a half earlier, and successfully pushed for road bonds. The sign on the spare tire cover urges one to vote for Good Roads bonds. This 1914 picture on State Route 65 near Wheatland in Yuba County shows three modes of transportation: rail, automobile, and horses. This is on a field inspection tour by the first state highway engineer, Austin B. Fletcher. You didn't check into a motel at night in those days. You camped out along the side of the road. You can see the tarp tied to the car in the background. Fletcher is the man on the right smoking a pipe. The man to the left is believed to be the office engineer, R.E. Dodge, who was also the first state bridge engineer. The next man to the left is believed to be the driver. We don't know if Fletcher could drive or not, but in every tour picture, Fletcher always has a chauffeur. The picture was taken by Thomas Bedford, the District 2 engineer and founder of the Quarter Century Club. Another field inspection trip in 1914. This is at Bridal Veil Falls on U.S. Route 50 in El Dorado County. In the same year that Fletcher formed the Division of Highways, 1912, the Innu Good Roads Club promoted a tour with the Studebaker Motor Car Company called Tres Caminos Passear. The purpose was to promote good roads and motoring to the Panama Pacific exhibition to be held in San Francisco in 1915. The tour would demonstrate to motorists that one could get through to California by car, and there would be places to drive once they got here. Emily Post, of etiquette fame, did drive from New York City over the Lincoln Highway to the exposition in 1915. It took over 2 months. The Tres Caminos Pasar covered 3 routes in California: the Lincoln Highway from San Francisco to Myers, now U.S. Route 50, El Camino Sierra, Myers to Newhall, down the east side of the Sierras, now Route 395 and 14, and El Camino Real from San Diego to San Francisco. The tour stopped and posed for publicity shots all along the route. This is on the steps of the state capitol with Governor Hiram Johnson. This is the tour emerging from the old high-level Broadway tunnel in Contra Costa County. This tunnel has been replaced by the Caldercut tunnels at a lower elevation on State Route 24. The old abandoned tunnel is still there, but closed to traffic. This is typical of early state highway construction. This is on U.S. Route 101 near Cloverdale in Sonoma County in 1914. Construction of U.S. Route 101 near Templeton in San Luis Obispo County in 1914. The drag is built in the shape of a subgrade section. The men ride on the drag to hold it down as it cuts the subgrade. This horn-drawn scraper is working on U.S. Route 101 in Santa Clara County. Much of the early road construction was done by hand, as shown here on U.S. Route 99 in Madera County. These men are paving what is now Interstate 80 in Alameda County, around the Berkeley area. This is a paving crew in 1914. This was called Riding the Boot, the year 1916. 35 years later, it was being done this way. This is a typical concrete paving project of 1914. Cement and sand is stacked up on the side. Aggregates are waiting in the wagons on the left. Materials are delivered to the mixer in wheelbarrows. 16-foot wide concrete paving was the choice of the California Highway Commission. This scene is on U.S. Route 99 in Madera County. This is another concrete paving project on U.S. Route 101 in Monterey County. The dry materials, aggregates, sand, and cement were proportioned by spreading out on the grade ahead of the mixer. Then they were either scooped into the mixer or loaded by wheelbarrow for mixing with water. Excavation with a donkey engine and a drag line for U.S. Route 101 in Del Norte County in 1914. Launching of a 3-pin timber arch at Rock Creek on U.S. Route 101 in Mendocino County in 1916. The designer, F.W. Hazelwood, thought this was the first use of this type of structure. 7 crossings of Rattlesnake Creek in Trinity County at Route 36 in 1916. Construction of the Sacramento River Bridge in Dunsmuir in Siskiyou County in 1916, now Interstate 5. This bridge is still in service. This is the kind of traffic that the early state highway system was being built for. This is on U.S. Route 99 in Merced County in 1914. After the First World War in 1919, the U.S. Army gave surplus Army trucks to the state highway departments for highway maintenance. They were known as Liberty trucks. This was the beginning of our mechanized fleet. This scene is at the Sacramento Equipment Shop, 34th and Stockton Boulevard in 1923. This truck driver seems to have his wife and child along for the day. This picture is titled, Hauling Bridge Girders from Reading. This looks like another Fletcher inspection tour at the Yolo Causeway, now Interstate Route 80, west of Sacramento. This is a state surveyor laying out a bridge abutment on State Route 70, the Feather River Lateral, near Pulga in Plumas County in 1930. Generally, the north-south trunk routes were constructed by private contractors. The lateral highways, those branching off from the trunk routes, were generally constructed using prison labor. This is a typical prison labor camp on the Ridge Route in Los Angeles County. It was a real privilege for an inmate to get to work on a state road gang. You got to work out in the fresh air and sunshine, and the division highways fed well. Trustees who got out of line were sent directly back to prison. Convict labor camps were used beginning in 1914 and were still in use up through the mid-1970s. Much of the state highway system built with contract labor was done by hand. Materials being hauled to the job site on State Route 299 near Helena, Trinity County. As time marched on, more modern machinery was put into service. This is on State Route 180 along the Kings River in Kings County. In 1934, Honor Camp 25 put the abandoned LaGrange Gold mine water system back into service. They used the hydraulic monitors to excavate nearly 11 million yards from the summit or Oregon Hill for a roadway cut. The debris flow was channeled by the use of log cribbing to build the approach roadway fill. This is now State Route 299 in Trinity County. This labor-intensive project is not a prison gang, but a 1932 National Recovery Relief Camp on State Route 70 in Plumas County. The man standing on the left side of the bank almost looks like he's holding the whip. 1934 saw the beginning of construction of the Tower Bridge over the Sacramento River on M Street in Sacramento. Another Depression-era bridge was the Dolan Creek Bridge on Coast Highway 1 in Monterey County. Dolan Creek is touted as the only 3-pin timber arch ever built in the state. Those who make this claim apparently have never heard of the Rock Creek Arch seen earlier. Probably the most picturesque and photographed bridge on the Monterey coast is at Bixby Creek. The bridge was constructed in 1934. Another National Recovery Act project was the construction of the San Francisco-Oakland Bay Bridge. The construction spanned 5 years, 1931 to 1936. This is another view of the San Francisco-Oakland Bay Bridge. The Golden Gate Bridge, towers, and cable spinning are seen in the background because the bridge was under construction at the same time. Here we see a construction shot of them lifting a deck panel into place on the San Francisco-Oakland Bay Bridge. Former President Herbert Hoover attended the opening of the San Francisco-Oakland Bay Bridge on November 12, 1936. This seems appropriate since he was educated as a civil engineer and since the bridge was a Depression recovery project. After all, Hoover is blamed as the person who caused the Great Depression in the first place. This is the San Francisco-Oakland Bay Bridge as seen today. As the nation emerged from the Great Depression, better economic times put more people into automobiles. There just weren't enough traffic lanes to accommodate everyone. Traffic demand spawned the freeway dream. The Arroyo Seco in Los Angeles was the site of the first freeway. It became State Route 11. The heavy excavation was done by steam shovel, but the side slopes were done by hand. The Arroyo Seco Parkway was opened to traffic in 1940. Note the high-type design 60-foot on- and off-ramps. 18 years later, the world-renowned traffic engineer Carl Moskowitz of the California Division of Highways determined that 600 feet was the more appropriate length for the on-ramps. During World War II, highway construction and maintenance were dormant. But as the post-war peacetime economy recovered, the traffic volumes grew to unprecedented demands. This put a strain upon the neglected system. Under these conditions, freeways were seen as something good. People appreciated them. People demanded them. The Collier-Burns Freeway and Expressway Act of 1947 laid the plans for a great freeway system. President Eisenhower's National System of Interstate and Defense Highways in 1954 and 1960 provided the needed funding to make it happen. So the state went to work and embarked on the golden age of freeways. This shot is on State Route 118 in Los Angeles County. This falsework jungle is on the WX Street Viaduct, Business 80 in Sacramento. In the early freeway years, concrete was handled in buggies. During most of the era, though, concrete was handled by bucket and crane, as shown here at Army Street in San Francisco on Route 280. By the end of the era, concrete was being handled by pump, as being done here at Victor Avenue on Route 44 in Redding, Shasta County. The freeway era separated traffic into free-flowing lanes, epitomized by the four-level interchange in downtown Los Angeles. This site was the southern terminus of the Arroyo Seco Freeway in 1940, as it intersected with the old Spanish El Camino Real. Freeways provided giant artistic patterns in our cities. This is the route's 92-101 interchange in San Mateo County. The era also spawned the desire for beauty as well as utility. Many freeways became works of art. This award-winning bridge is at Crystal Springs Reservoir on Route 280 in San Mateo County. Freeway landscaping became to be expected. Many city redevelopment and beautification projects were accomplished with freeways. This scene is on Interstate 5 in San Diego. The Pioneer Memorial Bridge in Sacramento carries Interstate Business 80 over the Sacramento River at Miller Park. A new north-south trunk route, Interstate 5, was built along the west side of the San Joaquin Valley. State Senator Randolph Collier of Siskiyou County, known as the father of the California freeway system, is shown here opening one of the new sections in 1967. Pine Valley Bridge, the only segmentally pre-stressed concrete bridge ever built on the state highway system, formed a link of Interstate Route 8 in San Diego County in 1974. The Potrero Hill retaining wall on Route 280 in San Francisco is reminiscent of the Hanging Gardens of Babylon. Carson Pass Highway, State Route 88 in Alpine County, was awarded Parade Magazine's Scenic Highway Award in 1965. Randolph Collier was recognized by the naming of the safety roadside rest in his honor on the Klamath River in Siskiyou County on Interstate Route 5. This is the Gold Run Rest Stop on Interstate Route 80 in Placer County. Safety roadside rest areas provide driver safety and natural, historical, and ecological appreciation for the convenience of the motorists. This display portrays the historical significance of the area being on the face of an old placer mine. Environmental concerns became paramount in the early 1970s with the passage of both state and federal environmental acts. This is a desert tortoise relocation effort to mitigate the impact of a desert freeway. Women became part of the previously male-dominated labor force. Multiple use of freeway airspace finally became a reality after more than a decade of advocacy by Art Elliott of the State Bridge Department. Disabled motorist services are provided by the state to avoid traffic tie-ups. This is the tow service provided on the San Francisco-Oakland Bay Bridge. Ferry boat service is still provided by the Department of Transportation. This ferry boat, though, the Carquinez, which provided ferry service across the Carquinez Straits, was replaced by the Benicia Martinez Bridge in the mid-1960s. Modern and ingenious techniques are employed to maintain the state transportation system. This tunnel washer was invented and built by the Caltrans equipment shop. Barriers, rails, and crash cushions are tested before being put into service on the state system. Snow removal has long been an operational service of the State Department. This scene is at Echo Summit on U.S. Route 50 in El Dorado County. Interstate 80 over Donner Summit to the north became an all-weather bare pavement route in the early 1960s. During storms, state snowplows operate around the clock, even during whiteout conditions, so that when the storm subsides, the pavement will be clear for travel. Flooding regularly brings highwaymen into action to keep roads open for public convenience. The Christmas flood of 1964 exceeded the mythical 1,000-year storm. This is what remained of the Van Dusen River Bridge on State Route 36 in Humboldt County. Note the trees that speared the bridge at high water. This is the remains of the Douglas Memorial Bridge over the Klamath River on Route 101 in Del Norte County. Giant redwood logs floating down the swollen rivers rammed and battered several bridges during this great flood. Alton Kay, the bridge engineer in the area, phoned in regular reports about flood damage. When this bridge went down, he reported that, "She's gone from bare to bare." The Army provided emergency ferry service across the Klamath until a temporary bridge could be built. This long bridge on State Route 36 is typical of the temporary emergency bridges built by the state after the flood. The state responds to all emergency situations that affect the state transportation system. A series of devastating earthquakes began with the Sylmar earthquake in 1971. The Loma Prieta earthquake of 1989 dropped the double-decked Cypress Street Viaduct in Oakland, which had stood for well more than 3 decades. The tower pier span of the East Bay Bridge came apart, acting as a fuse, which prevented the rest of the bridge from pulling itself down. At Struve Slough, on State Route 1 in San Mateo County, the deck flipped up into the air while the substructure moved sideways. When the deck dropped back, the caps missed the displaced pile columns, which punched up through the deck. Since 1989, the state has been involved in an enormous retrofitting program to make the 25,000 bridges in the state more resistant to earthquakes. The Northridge earthquake of 1994 added emphasis to the program. Nearly all of the state highway resources are currently dedicated to the retrofitting effort. Placing steel shells around bridge columns is one of the most commonly used schemes to strengthen columns. This is what the Avenue of the Giants looked like in 1910 when the state adopted it as a state route. This picture was taken during the initial survey for the route. The state eventually built this highway through the redwood forest. However, recreational traffic, competing with logging trucks, eventually rendered the highway functionally useless. Now U.S. Route 101 is a freeway passing through the redwoods. This is an early version of the Klamath Bridge at Orleans on State Route 96. There have been 7 crossings at this site, 1 burned and 5 have washed out during major floods. The bridge we have at Orleans today is a steel box suspended span. This is at Dog Creek in the Sacramento River Canyon at Valmers, as the road appeared in 1925. This was on one of the original 2 north-south trunk routes. It later became U.S. Route 99 and is now Interstate Route 5. The Dog Creek Bridge, which eliminated the long, sharp curve shown in the previous picture, was opened in 1927. The state legislature named the bridge the Harlan D. Miller Bridge, in honor of the then state bridge engineer. Shasta Dam, a National Recovery Act project, made it necessary to relocate portions of Route 99 north of Redding. The new Pitt River Bridge was built in 1941, replacing the former bridge at Baird, built by the state around 1916. It is now under Lake Shasta, along with the town of Kennett. Today, Interstate Route 5 skirts Lake Shasta in the same area. The Harlan D. Miller Bridge is still there, but slightly out of view from the interstate. This is Interstate Route 5 in Mount Shasta today in Siskiyou County above the Sacramento River Canyon. This is what was left of the Dutch Flat Wagon Road built by the Central Pacific Railroad in 1867 when the state assumed responsibility for the Donner Trail route. The state built this serpentine roadway up the Donner Pass escarpment where earlier pioneers had to disassemble their wagons to haul them over the rocks with block and tackle. The Rainbow Bridge beautifully frames Donner Lake on this former U.S. Route 40, dedicated the Victory Highway after World War I. In later years, the road was paved. This is Interstate Route 80 over Donner Pass today. Further down the hill, this is Interstate 80 at Immigrant Gap. Do you recognize this place? It's Corte Madera grade and Richardson Bay in Marin County in 1916, long before the Golden Gate Bridge opened up the county. Highway 101 across Richardson Bay looks more like this today. Remember the ferry building in San Francisco? This is where the ferry boats from Oakland docked for many years before the Bay Bridge was built. In the 1950s, the state built the controversial Embarcadero Viaduct in front of the ferry building, obscuring its architectural beauty from the city. The city complained for more than 3 decades, demanding its removal. The state held firm, citing the demand by the Route 480 traffic. The Loma Prieta earthquake finally settled the removal problem in 1989. The Carquinez Straits Bridge, built in 1927, had a 90-degree turn off the south approach in Crockett. In 1959, a parallel twin structure was built, and the south approach was straightened out to about a 45-degree curve. The realignment required the excavation of what was known as the Big Cut. In 1987, local residents celebrated the bridge's 60th birthday with a free flashlight ceremony. It was a spoof on the $1.5 million lighting of the Bay Bridge for only its 50th birthday the year before. This timber trestle at Rincon Beach was built in 1912. The early Spaniards simply crossed the beach at low tide. Heavy wagons using El Camino Real had to take the longer, steeper route over the Casitas Pass, which we saw earlier, to bypass this narrow beach. The timber causeway only lasted a couple of years. The surf pounded it to pieces. So the state built a concrete seawall in 1916, filling in behind with sand to form a roadbed. Later, the state built a much larger and higher seawall further out in the surf. Today, Route 101 is a multi-lane freeway. Can you identify this site? It's Grapevine Canyon in 1914, when the state adopted this as a route between Los Angeles and Bakersfield. 2 years earlier, there had been a heated debate over the best route between Los Angeles and Bakersfield. The other proposal was the easier but longer route via Mojave and back over Tehachapi Pass. The state built this winding roadway from Wheeler Ridge into Grapevine Canyon and then up to the Ridge Route. Later, the road was straightened and widened. This is Interstate 5 along the Grapevine Canyon today. Up on top, the state built the Ridge Route. The sum of all the curves is equal to 110 full circles. In 1925, the state straightened out the Ridge Route. Closer to Los Angeles, the Ridge Route passed through Beals Cut. This location has been known as San Fernando Grade and Newhall Grade. The early Spaniards dug a 12-foot deep cut in this El Camino Real Pass to ease the grade. Later, the U.S. Army, under General Beale, of Camel Corps fame, stationed at Fort Tijon, dug the cut down to 80 feet. Early Los Angeles car dealers often had to demonstrate that their cars could make this grade in order to make a sale. Even so, the grade was still too steep, so Los Angeles County dug a tunnel. Alas, the tunnel proved to be inadequate. So, the state dug a gigantic cut, removing the tunnel. Old Beals Cut is still up there on the south side of the current Route 14. It's hard to see from the road, but you can walk up to it. This modern alignment of the Ridge Route through Piru Gorge no longer exists. It is now under Pyramid Reservoir. This is what Interstate Route 5 on the Ridge Route looks like today. Do you recognize this place? It's Santa Monica Beach. In 1912, the state built this first road from Malibu Beach to Santa Monica Beach. By 1930, Santa Monica Beach looked like this. It looks the same way today, only the cars are newer. In 1920, the desert entrances to California looked like this. This is near Yuma, now Interstate Route 8. This is a U.S. mail vehicle negotiating the desert near Blythe in 1921. In 1915, the first plank road was built across the Imperial Sand Dunes. It was simply a parallel pair of boards which were difficult to stay on. Wheels often drifted off into soft sand. In places, the planks got covered under drifting sand, while in others, moving dunes blew out from under the planks. In 1916, the state built a better plank road out of transverse railroad ties tied together with steel bands. It was 1 lane wide, with turnouts and water barrels every quarter of a mile. The new plank road only held up a little better than the first. Today, modern interstate highways cross our southern deserts. As we enter the second century, the people of the state of California can be proud of the accomplishments of their state transportation system during its first century. The state has developed the best intermodal transportation system for the 6th largest economy amongst the nations of the world. We can salute the bicycle riders who were responsible for there even being a state responsibility for transportation. We can thank the state legislature, who for years has sought, recruited, and funded a first-rate transportation system. And we can salute the employees of the Department of Transportation, who are the finest team of transportation professionals ever assembled anywhere in the world.